Welcome to Overcome Yourself, the podcast, where we rewrite stories, shift mindsets, and make dreams come true. I'm your host, Nicole Tuxbury. Let's get into today's episode. Hello there, and welcome back to the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. As you know, my name is Nicole, and I'm very excited to be here today with Maxwell. And now Maxwell has an incredible story of illustrating, I think, one of the points that I talk about in my book of how he took something that he thought was his weakness, and with a little help from some friends, he was able to turn that into one of his superpowers. And that's what brings him here today to talk to us. So please, Max, take it away. Introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit about who you are and who you help.
Okay, so I am Maxwell Ivy, known as the Blind Blogger. I am an accessibility advisor who helps small business owners and sauce level companies improve the accessibility of their products, services, and content so they can leverage the power of the disability community and also improve the user experiences of everybody else. I am a former carnival owner, amusement equipment broker, life goals coach, and podcast guest booker. And about 5 years ago, I started realizing that I have been an expert in accessibility for years. I've been educating people about it ever since 2007 when I started my first website. And accessibility was so non-existent that I had to teach myself to code HTML just to get online. And that I've been doing the work, educating people, advocating, championing, just haven't been focusing on it as a career, getting paid for it. So with the help of friends like Alex Sanfilippo, the founder of Podmatch.com, who was my first paying client, and others, I've realized that this is where I need to be. This is my perfect place, especially because I have a message that's unusual, if not unique, to the disability community, which is we have to focus more on the positive benefits of inclusion and why organization leaders should care about accessibility at all.
Tell us more. Like, this is all so on point. So yeah, tell us more. How can we do that?
Okay, so first off, I feel like we need to talk more about the why before we get to the how. And there are so
Yes.
there are so many great benefits. Some of them I recently discovered that I haven't been talking about. So if first off, whenever you improve accessibility for people who have various physical, mental, or emotional challenges to navigating the online world, you will always or almost always improve the user experience of people who don't have disabilities. Many of the things I complain about as a blind computer user, when I complain about them to sighted people, they're like, we struggle with that too, Max.
Hmm.
So improving accessibility improves user experience. It also will raise your search engine rankings, and it will communicate your message to the AI bots. In fact, search engines and AI bots have to have the internet explained to them. And one of the best ways you can teach them who you are, what you offer, and who should care about your business is to embrace accessibility and make sure you're meeting all the basic minimum web content accessibility guidelines for online accessibility. Then beyond that, there is a huge audience out there. It's generally assumed that 1 in 6 people globally will have some form of disability or identify as having at least one form of disability, which would be roughly 50 to 60 million people in the US. And out of that 50 to 60 million, probably 12 to 15 of those millions would have some sort of vision loss issue.
Wow.
However, that only talks about people who will admit that they have a disability, because quite often people with neurodevelopmental disabilities do not want people to know they have the disability, or it's not obvious. And then people, as they age, they tend to have the same challenges of vision loss, hearing loss, and loss of motor control, but they will never think of that as being disabled. They think of that as just growing old, but they have the same needs. So there's this huge audience. And because such a small percentage of the internet embraces accessibility, and a small percentage of business owner, period, we want to support the companies that will make the effort. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to have solved it. They just have to be making a continuous effort towards accessibility. And we want to see them succeed. So we will, in many cases, we'll stay with them through the good times and the bad, and we will see their investments in accessibility as a value-added proposition that will cause us to sometimes pay more for a product that is delivered in an accessible manner. We are very loyal consumers, and we're also very vocal consumers. When we find somebody that's making the effort, we will promote them to our friends, our families, our social media followings. And there's really a big underestimation of just how many there are out here that have a disability that have a huge social media following or YouTube following that the mainstream brands are ignoring because they just don't realize the power and the potential. I like to say that when you improve accessibility to bring in customers who have a disability or bring in customers who care about people with disabilities, it's like hiring influencers that you don't have to pay. So these are all many benefits. A couple others that I recently learned about is that when you build an accessible website, you create better code, which means the website is simpler to maintain going forward. You use less electrical when you're and less data. And one thing that a lot of website owners are concerned with is your your site load times will actually
Yes.
go down as a result of improving accessibility.
Oh, that's really cool. Um, so much gold in there. I know that one of the things as when I got SEO certified, I took a course. And one of the things that is recommended that we always do, one of the things we have to do for websites for accessibilities is like having alt tags on the images. And so that makes it accessible, I always say, for someone using a screen reader. So like you're the perfect example of that. But even before we started recording this call, you gave me a great tip of adding a comment to the photo, like within when you save it on your computer, so even before it gets online, with basically that alt text, which is just a simple description of what's going on in the picture, so that your screen reader can like literally read you what's going on in the picture, right? Because it can't read a picture,
Right,
if that makes
exactly.
sense.
Yes. Yeah, there are some AI tools that are currently
Mhm.
claiming that they can describe pictures. However, I'm not sold on those as of yet. I think there's hope within AI that it can do alt text and do image and video descriptions, but I feel like there's also hope for the driverless car, and I'm not sure if either one of those are ever going to happen. But
Yes.
what I was thinking that whenever see, here's one of the problems with alt text. I think most people nowadays know about the need for it and know about the
Hmm.
the search engine optimization or SEO value of doing it. The problem is that there's no way to just do it and not have to do it again. So like the reason I asked you if you could add it to the comments is because when you upload your images to your website or social media posts, you will have to add that information when you upload it. When
Hmm.
I share those same images on my social media feeds, I will have to do the same thing. I'll have to add those descriptions. There's no way for them to follow. But by putting it in the comments, you put it somewhere that's handy where I don't have to think, okay, where did I put that email that had the description of these images, or where did I put that direct message? And so you can always just go into the comment, do a copy and paste, and add that alt text when you're uploading that photo, or when you're sending it to somebody else. You can tell them, hey, if you need alt text, just look in the comments. So it's a handy way to store the information so that anybody that needs it down the road that wants it, you can just say it's in the comments. Just and so that's why it doesn't solve the problem of adding the alt text, but I think it does make it the process easier the
Yeah.
longer you get away from the day you created the photo. And I don't know about you, but I know with me,
Yeah.
memory gets fuzzy tomorrow. So
Yes, I know. I know exactly what you mean. That is a fantastic tip. And so I really appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Because it's something that's so easy to implement. And you're right, it does make it easier in the long run. Because if you have a picture, my website's, like if 10 years passed and you
wow.
need to share that picture, like how are you gonna remember where it came from? Like
Uh, yes, and first, let me congratulate you on being out here for 10 years. That is a major accomplishment.
Oh,
The
thank
more,
you.
yes, yeah, the more research we get on online business owners, website owners, bloggers, podcasters, the more we realize that even a few months or a whole year can be like a lifetime online for people.
Hmm.
So to do it for 10 years like you have, or for me to be doing it since 2007, getting close to 20 years,
Yeah.
it's a testament to our grit, resilience, and just not understanding how to quit.
Yes, thank you. And I commend you as well. Because it is a feat, and things change so fast, so keeping up with everything, it really is something else, isn't it? But before we dive into something else, what I want to know, I want to back up a little bit. And I would love to hear a little bit more about your story, because you mentioned that you owned, was it a carnival? Is that what you
Yes.
said? So can you tell us the story of Maxwell and how he ended up here doing what he's doing today?
Sure. So I grew up in a family of carnival owners. There were four different carnivals in the Houston area owned by members of my immediate family. And my cousin still operates one. I like to say that he won the Monopoly game. He's got all the rides and all the money. And his business is now worth millions of dollars, and they travel from Houston to Nebraska and back every year. And so,
Wow.
but my grandfather started the carnival in the 50s. My dad and the other in-laws continued the business in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I was in the business up until 2003 when my dad passed away. Pretty much everybody in our family has been in the business at some point, even if it was just working summers between college or work,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just what we did and what for the most part we continue to do. So my dad passed away, and we were able to keep our carnival going for a couple of years, and then the insurance premiums got to the point where we just couldn't sustain ourselves by ourselves. One thing most people understand is if you are a small business, it's very challenging to continue to compete in an industry where most of your competitors are much larger than you are. So
Yes.
we eventually combined our rides and games with my uncle's carnival. We sold our rides, and I needed something to do with myself because my kids' games were not able to compete on his big midway, and I didn't have the money to invest in newer things that people would want to spend money on. And I just didn't like the idea of being a drag on our family's finances, because the last year and a half or so, they were taking money out of the food trailer and other attractions in order to buy the supplies and keep me out on the Midway. So in 2007, I started a website called the Midway Marketplace, where I figured I could help people sell their surplus rides because I had had to do it for my family.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, and the thing was, though, is I really didn't feel like I knew how to do anything else. So I was very highly motivated to just find a way to do things, to solve problems, to ask questions, and basically just to work all hours, because it was like if this doesn't work, then what do I do next? So I filed for the domain name. I taught myself to code HTML. I figured out how to recruit clients by reaching out to people who knew me or knew my dad before he passed away. I figured out how to build an email list by exchanging free links to people's businesses on my website for their signing up to my email list, which I did not even know that was building a lead magnet at the time. I got to figure out something I can give them so they'll do this, and that was what I came up with.
That's it.
So writing copy and managing media, and then eventually social media, and eventually blogging, recording videos, and eventually podcasting. But I started podcasting as a guest in 2013, promoting the amusement equipment. As I transitioned from there to a life goals coach, because people said that I was inspiring them and they wanted to hear more about being a blind entrepreneur. So the blindblogger.net became, because people had been using that as a shorthand for me on LinkedIn and Facebook for a couple of years at that point, mainly because back then, most people with a disability were hiding their challenges. They were afraid that
Hmm.
there would be a stigma attached to their disability and it would cause them not to succeed in this new world we had of called the internet. And basically, I just didn't know how to not put myself out there being, the son of carnival owners and promoters and such. So I became the blind blogger because I was one of the few blind people that was blogging. And I continued doing podcast interviews. And then in 2016, I finally was challenged to start my own podcast, which I did with the help of a friend I met online named Fred By from Canada, who said he would help me. He would do the technical stuff. So all I had to do was show up and talk. And we did that for 6 months before I eventually went in and started doing it myself. Since then, I've traveled the country to do speaking and book signings. I've written 4 books, 2 of them award
Wow.
winners. Generally, when I leave the house, I do it on very tight budgets that would cause most people to just go, I'm staying home. Uh, I generally travel by myself because for some reason, none of my family want to go with me when I leave. And, that usually ends up being part of the story. Max out there by himself. Usually some challenge will arise that I either didn't plan for or didn't expect, and I have to figure out how to get through it. And people learn lessons from that sort of thing. Uh, I have, I've done, like I said, I've spoken in front of conferences, both inspirational, motivational messages about overcoming adversity, and also accessibility and inclusion as far as why people should invest in accessibility as a competitive advantage. And a few years ago, I finally faced my fear of singing in public. I started
Nice.
recording some covers, and then I wrote some of my own songs. And now every so often, my friends give me a hard time because they want to know when the album's coming. And I keep telling them, there ain't no album. It ain't happening. So these are just, I continue to do the next thing. Sometimes it was a challenge that I had to meet because of the business I was in, which was, coding HTML or pitching podcast hosts or pitching speaking events or finding the funding to get on a train and go to Philadelphia. So, and sometimes it was just the thing I was doing. It was something I had to learn in order to continue moving forward. And over the years, I've been challenged and encouraged to do a lot of different things. And now here I am at this point in my life where I'm an accessibility expert. I'm an inspirational motivational speaker. I'm a regular contributing writer with a monthly column in PHP Architect. I'm a lot of these things I'm doing because back 18 years ago I said, well, this is the only thing I know how to do. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to find a way to do it and get better as I go. And now here I am. So, and for the longest time, when I used to sing on my podcast or when I sang at public speaking, I would sing The River by Garth Brooks because I felt like that song was pretty much the epitome of how I've gotten from where I was to where I was next to where I am now.
Wow. 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 And the how did you figure out this I guess consulting for accessibility? Because you said that you didn't even realize that that was a possibility until someone was like, you're really good at this. So can you tell me just a little bit about that?
And that is that's a perfect representation because the first 2 people who recognized this in me first was Alex Sanfilippo from Podmatch, who was my first paying client. I met him
Shout
at
out to Alex.
podmatch.com. Yeah, and I met him at Podfest in 2019. We both spoke in the Pechacucha track. I did a talk on
Nice.
interdependence, and he did a talk on storytelling as part of podcasting. And he followed me out into the lobby because he said he had to meet me after my talk, and we were friends. And then since I have been a prolific podcast guest, I was one of the first users of Podmatch. And I was, of course, one of the first thing I had to do was get them to make it accessible because in the very early days, it was really not much use to me being a screen reader user.
Hmm.
But at first, we exchanged emails and I gave him advice on a volunteer basis because I really liked what he was doing. I wanted to see him succeed. And then when the opportunity came along for them to actually hire somebody to add them to their team, he was like, "Okay, Max, we got to get you in here." And then as I've worked for him, he has continued to be a friend and a mentor who gives me advice on my business, on things I'm doing, things I shouldn't be doing, pricing, a lot of things that he has helped me with and continues. And same for his wife, Alicia, who is a very powerful woman in the field of commerce herself and marketing, and very supportive. If you're lucky enough to be somebody she replies to emails from, you should consider yourself really lucky. So that was the first. But the other thing was, and this is, I think, a good example, because I speak about interdependence all the time, which is asking for help or opportunities or
Mhm.
accepting them when offered. And I always talk about how some of the best things that happened to me were because somebody came along and said, I think you should do this, or I don't think you can do this, or I want to help you do this. So about 4 years ago, I'm on LinkedIn. I sent a thank you note to somebody from audioi.com because I'm trying to expand my network among people in the accessibility field to learn more about something that I'm being told I'm an expert at. And
Mhm.
their reply was, Max, it's you're welcome for sending the note, but we think we have a job for you. And I'm like, okay, send me the link and I'll look at it. And they sent it to me, and I read through it, and about half of it I could do, as far as educating people about accessibility and doing speaking and doing webinars. But the other half of it was all about Microsoft. And I've been a Mac user forever. I don't know nothing about Microsoft products. I have a Windows computer now with a speech on it, thanks to the Texas workforce here in Texas. But I'm still not a Windows user. I told them that, and I said, but I would love to support the eventual hire in a contract position. And they said, well, we are always open to having people contract for us, but we need you to submit an application. So I didn't even have a resume at that point because I hadn't had a real job in so long. I didn't need one. So I put together a real quick, not so impressive resume as far as a visual appeal goes. And I submitted the application on LinkedIn. Thankfully, they used what is it, simple apply or whatever. And 30 minutes
Mhm.
later, I get an email that says, Mr. Ivey, we appreciate your interest in the position, but you're not qualified for it. And I got a good laugh out of that. And I wrote back to him. I said, I understand that. That's the point. We were pretty sure I wasn't qualified for it when I applied. So 4 interviews later, including one with the COO of the company, who it turned out his family is still in the amusement industry.
Oh
They are
wow.
game owners and game manufacturers out of Ohio. He's no longer with the company, but every time I interviewed, we had to, we would go over the the process as to how I got to where I was. And each time I would tell that about the application thing, and the other person I was talking to would get a good laugh out of it. So I feel like it may have even helped me in the interview process that I openly and honestly shared this experience that a lot of people might have thought was negative or maybe even derogatory. But like I told you, I put myself out there pretty much everywhere and anytime. And they invited me to become a content contributor. At first, I wrote articles for their blog based on accessibility, but using my unusual approach, which is emphasizing the many benefits to businesses about accessibility, and also using my storytelling. That's one of the other things I really have to thank them and other website owners for, who have invited me to write, is that I have really learned how good a storyteller I am, even if I generally take longer to tell my stories than some other people would. Um, so I did writing for their blog, and then eventually they asked me to do some site evaluations. Last year, they asked me to become a host for a podcast they were trying called Hearsay Shorts. It lasted for about 3 months, and they realized it wasn't getting traction like they wanted it to. So we stopped doing it, and that allowed me the time to start my own second podcast, The Accessibility Advantage. So I now have two podcasts: What's Your Excuse, which is about people who have overcome adversity, and The Accessibility Advantage, which is about how it's in everybody's best interest to be inclusive. And this is how and I have a really good friend. Her name is Adrienne Smith. She's been with me from the beginning. She was the first person to help me understand how inspiring my story is and why it is. And we had this conversation a couple of years ago about my finally accepting being an accessibility expert. She said, Max, the problem is you've been so many other things. You didn't want to be nothing new again, and you didn't want to be an accessibility person even more than that. She says, so I'm not surprised it took you a long time to get here, but get over it. This is who you are. This is what the world needs. And, you just need to embrace it and own it. And of course, then as I've been working with audio and other people, I've realized something else about myself. And that is about 14 years ago, when I started my second website as the Blind Blogger at theblindblogger.net, I got two responses from people who either knew me or knew of me. People who were sighted who knew me said, Max, you're too good. You're too talented. You don't need to lean on your disability in order to be successful with your other website. And then people who had vision loss or who are active in the community of people with vision loss, their response was, Max, what are you doing? Why are you playing the quote blind card, unquote, to get your website started? And so I didn't really realize, these were the responses I got from quite a few people at that time. But what happened, you have to realize back then I was one of the very few people that was open about his disability online. And I was one of the few people for years. But now, if you look at the internet, if you go on social media or you go to websites through search engines, you pretty much can't throw a rock online without running across somebody whose bio, profile, website name includes a reference to a disability or some sort of challenges related on their physical, mental, emotional abilities or their life circumstances. And so, with the help of some of the people I work with now, I've come to realize not only am I the accessibility expert, but I was a trailblazer. I was the guy or one of the guys who helped make it possible for more people to be open about their disability online.
Yes. And you know what? Disability, having a disability is one of the only minorities that anyone can fall into at any moment.
Oh, I love that you said that because I am really down with that approach to disability or to differently abled or because you're right. At any point in our life, we can all be
Yes.
disabled. It can be hereditary, genetic, it can be
Mm-hmm.
trauma based, it can even be, and in many cases, is age based. And
Mm-hmm.
because if any of us can be disabled at any time, and as you say, be part of a minority group, because we are a fringe minority group that
Yes.
we don't even have the government protections of other minority groups in most countries around the world. So we are
Mm-hmm.
definitely underrepresented and underappreciated, but you're right. But I expected I would have to explain that to you. I just can't believe you just busted out with that statement because that's exactly the message I think we need to be going with.
Yes. Well, I have an invisible disability.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I hurt my back in an accident when I was about 9 years old. And when I was 21, I was told I had the back of an elderly person. And if I didn't quit working in restaurants and carrying heavy things, I'd be in a wheelchair in less than 5 years. And
Wow.
so I had to quit my job and learn a whole new way to make money and heal myself and get stronger and so yeah, and so I understand what it's like to wake up one day and be like, I can't even walk to the bathroom. And people look at you and they're like, you're fine, you're young, like you could get strong again, and it's very frustrating. But it's amazing to be able to advocate for, to be an advocate and to help other people who are advocates. I work with someone else who woke up one day and her entire spine was smashed, and she couldn't walk around her house either. So she has to do a bunch of stuff, and she's an advocate as well, and one of the things that we talk about, like actually that you mentioned, how accessibility helps everyone. For example, ramps. If you put up a ramp in front of a building, anyone can use that ramp. If you put stairs, some people might not be able to use those stairs. And so starting off with making sure there's a ramp available, and that way everyone is available to use it, right? It opens up accessibility for everybody.
Right. One of my favorite examples is the curb cutouts because I find it crazy that some
Mm-hmm.
parts of the country they still fight over whether or not to have curb cutouts. But if you go anywhere they have them and ask new parents or delivery men what they think about curve cutouts, they will tell you, we love them.
Yes.
You know, that, and another example for an online example of this is for people who have vision loss but still have enough vision to use the monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Quite often, it really helps them if they can invert the text and put, say, a white or a light colored text on a black or dark colored background. And what they've found is that that's something that you put in for accessibility, but it's also something that makes it easier for people on mobile devices to read their screens at
Mm-hmm.
really high or really low light. So it's another example of how something that's designed to make the visually impaired people's lives easier makes everybody else's lives easier as well.
Yes, yes. So accessibility works for everyone. And it's so important. So I really thank you for coming out here and being vulnerable, right? Because all those years back, you were vulnerable enough to share what you were going through. And like you said, you became a trailblazer. And so I commend you for that and for doing everything that you do for maybe those who can't, right? Because they might not just not be able to. So I commend you. And I want to know, how can we stay in touch with you?
Right. I appreciate that. And what you said is so correct there. There are many, many people out there who aren't in a position to be vulnerable or advocate. I recently connected with a filmmaker from Singapore. Her entire crew is made up of people with disabilities. But
Wow.
in Singapore, about half her crew can't disclose their disabilities because they would lose their jobs.
Hmm.
So,
Wow.
so some people just can't advocate or can't be champion or can't even be open. So you're right. I am very blessed to get to be able to do this for others. And people can find me at theaccessibilityadvantage.com, or they can email me, Maxwell at theaccessibilityadvantage.com. If they want to check out the other podcasts, What's Your Excuse, and some of my more inspirational stuff, they can go to theblindblogger.net. And if you're on social media, my favorite platform is LinkedIn, where I am Maxwell Ivy, IV as in Victor, EY. So I do hope y'all will reach out to me. And one thing I want everybody here to know is I really do enjoy having conversations with people I don't know, with agendas I don't have. So don't feel like you have to be ready to hire me, to book me, or to buy something from me in order to talk to me. The world gets much better the more connections we make, the more friendships we're willing to have. So I do hope I'll hear from you, and I look forward to hearing what y'all have to say about our conversation today.
I love that so much. And I'm going to reach out to you about maybe being on your other podcast. So we'll see if we can have another conversation
That
coming
sounds like
soon.
fun. I look forward to it. That's the connection stuff that can happen through podcasting that is so underestimated, underrated.
Yes, I love it. And not just that, the audience we're connecting with, you guys that are listening. So thank you for being here with us. And now, before we do sign off, Maxwell, question, what's your biggest tip? Like, what's your biggest tip for the audience? That's how we like to sign off the show.
I would say that the most important thing that I do is I take action without thinking about everything it's going to take for me to get to the destination. Martin Luther King had a great quote. He said, "You have to be willing to take the first. It's easier to take the first step if you can't see the staircase." And
Mm-hmm.
so many of the things I've done without thinking about them as much as I should have. The other
Yes.
thing I would, yeah, the other thing I want to make sure y'all get is I really do believe in community and interdependence and asking for help. So one thing I always like to share if I can is this expression to help people get over the fear of asking for help, which is when you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received.
Oh, wow, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, because some people are really called to help. And so you are robbing them of that opportunity when you don't ask. It's
exactly.
their
Yes.
pleasure, right?
It's their pleasure. It can also be you're taking advantage of their expertise about a skill, ability, or subject of education.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Love it. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, I love it. I love everything we've talked about. I think it's so important. And we will catch you guys next time on the next episode of Overcome Yourself. Oh, I didn't say all of his links are going to be down in the show notes. So you can grab all of his available resources and make sure to follow Maxwell on social media. And we'll catch you guys next time. Bye. Thanks again for tuning in to Overcome Yourself, the podcast. Stay bold, stay grateful, and keep becoming your best you. For more information and resources from me, Nicole, head over to NicoleTuxbury.com/resources. See you next time.